What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to my brand new YouTube channel. This is Evolution Angler Bassin. My name is Miguel Malenciano, and in today's episode, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an inside look as to what kind of angler I am. I just started bass fishing 6 years ago. However, I am deeply, deeply down that rabbit hole, and I could not be a happier person. I just started tournament fishing. I fished 4 KBF tournaments last year, and this year I plan on running the table in terms of the state challenge series. I live in upstate New York, about an hour away from the city. I do live along the Appalachian Trail, which means we have mountains here, many ponds, lakes, reservoirs, streams. The point of today's video is to whip out one of the many series that I have coming for you. This one happens to be called What's in the Box. I am a tackle junkie, as many of us are, and I am very specific as to what I like to throw. So I figured there's probably not a better way to start this series off than to show you what I already throw. And that way you'll be a little bit more antiquated with the kind of angler that I am. Right off the bat, I'm a dirty water, shallow water angler. My comfort zone is definitely in that 2 to 8 foot range. However, in the last couple of years, I have been trying to diversify my portfolio in terms of how I catch my bass. I've learned how to throw hard baits. I've gone deep a little bit, but still my heart and soul lies near the bank. I throw primarily a lot of soft plastics. I love soft plastics. I learned with a 5-inch Cinco, and went down to a 4-inch, then back up to a 6-inch, then started running drop shot worms, then paddle tail swim baits, then your creatures, your craws, your larger swim baits in terms of 5 and 6-inch. That's pretty much where I am today in terms of finesse. Finesse. That is, I guess, where you could say I'm at as an angler. All right. So what I have spread out in front of me here is pretty much what I have left over from last year, and where I will start will be in the worm department. In terms of stick baits, I like to stick to your more reddish and greenish hues. Here, your run-of-the-mill stick baits, nothing crazy. I do like to throw a lot of wacky style, so these worms in particular were good for me because they already have the wacky worm ring already attached. And had I chose to just Texas rig these, then you could see that ring is completely hidden. And I like to throw these primarily pretty shallow around banks, around drop-offs, ledges. If not, Carolina rig them even. Moving on here, we have a bunch of Biospawn lures. Biospawn came on big for me, especially in the beginning of last year. I started noticing last year that the reddish hues made a big difference, a more realistic approach. This color in specific is the motor oil pattern for the Exo ribbon from Biospawn. This last year had to be my go-to worm. I love this because I could fish this anywhere in any pond. Didn't matter if it was deep, didn't matter if it was shallow. All you had to do was plan accordingly in terms of current and depth, play around with your weights, but this was a deadly color. And I think it's because it primarily resembles or has the same color pattern, especially on the greenish reddish hue here, as a red worm. Though it does have the girthiness of a night crawler, still I think bass just go crazy for that red worm look. The drop shot, the drop shot, the drop shot. I guess you could say I sort of had a little bit of a love affair with the drop shot, particularly with Zoom and Kitech. I do like the rib patterns, especially on the Kitech worms, but first let's take a look at the Zoom worms. These would be your regular Super Salt plus Finesse. I really like these worms. Off of this one color pattern alone, I'd say I caught 100. This pattern was good for getting numbers. This whole technique actually is perfect for getting numbers, especially in a tournament situation. You go ahead and get your bag out of the way with something like this, especially in the heat of the summer where bass are a little bit more finicky. This is great. Again, I like a more natural reddish hue, and you know, something as simple as this. This is a Walmart bait right here. This is a quick picker-upper. You stop Walmart, grab your bait, go to the lake, start catching them. Now here we have a little bit of a bigger profile. This is a 5.5 Kitech. The Easy Shaker. Ooh, you can smell that from here. This has the same rib shape as the Swing Impact. The same ribs rather. And you know, this is a beautiful worm. I like it because of the action it imparts, as you can see here. Especially in this size, it looks like a juvenile snake, to be honest with you. I think that's why I got as many bites as I did last year. A fish catcher overall, the drop shot. Next, we have the big worm category. One would be a 10-inch old monster. A little bit bigger version of a curly tail. This works great on a shaky head. I would toss this on a Magnum KVD shaky head weight, jig rather. This got me probably my third or fourth big fish of the season, and also would be great in that point of tournaments where you wanted to start upsizing your bite a little bit. Could not say enough about a giant worm on a shaky head. Love it. Here we have some KVD plastics, big worms as well, in your green pumpkin, or rather your watermelon red. And then I forget the name of this color here, but it does have that green pumpkin on the back. And what attracted me to this particular color here, again, you've got your green pumpkin hue here, blue in the middle, which your fish love, and then your natural hue, your natural red, sort of like a green pumpkin red on the belly. Then you have your Magnum tail here with your whipper. Yeah. This particular soft plastic is called a Helgramite. This color here is watermelon red, and believe it or not, this got me my big fish of the year. 5.5 pound fish, which isn't humongous by any standards, but for New York, it's doing pretty well, especially on a year where I fished a lot of finesse, did not worry about size really, other than those tournament situations. And you know, I just pretty much just fished my heart out. What I liked in terms of this lure here is the action. It's recommended to put it on a shaky head. However, I fished it on a straight Texas rig, sometimes on a naked Texas rig, no weight, just letting it float. And that is actually the technique that got me the big fish. The way that the action imparts on this is when you pull it through the water, it does wobble and roll here, that wave-like action. The lure itself it's got great profile to it, and it worked well. Moving on, some more worms. Here we have the Riot Bait batons. One is in the Joker color. This first one here is the Joker color. What can I say about the Wacky Rig? One of the first techniques I learned, and it's hard to stop using it even though it's just like dragging a club around. It's a fish catcher overall. I like the purple hues to this. Who doesn't like purple? This one in particular gave me the feel of a night crawler, and I could not stop throwing this. This I would like to throw, you know, when the bite was a little bit harder on sunny bluebird sky days, and it would get the job done for me. On the same token here, you have one, I forget the name of this one. They call it tidal blue. I think it's a crawfish pattern, to be honest with you. This one, I noticed I'd get more bites on the bottom, when I'd give it a couple drags before I'd whip it in. And I think it was because of that blue hue there, which resembles a craw pattern, especially late summer. This one came on pretty strong for me. Both of these worms here, I saw myself going back and buying a couple times. Yeah. Then for those fans of super finesse, we have the Ned Rig. This bad boy right here came in a mystery tackle box, and they call it the Sakushi Bug. I used a couple of them. They weren't bad, especially with the little appendages here, which have pretty nice action on the bottom. I love the color, like that purplish hue to it. It's for what it was. It was a great lure, and it sort of resembled and mimicked the Elastec. However, I don't know, there was something about the movement and the weight, the way that it fluttered down. It was okay. I used it, but it was okay. Now, these here, moving on. There's not much to say about that other than it's a fish catching machine. If you're a fan of finesse and if you have the patience for it, if the fish aren't biting on any day for any particular reason, or you just can't figure them out, it's always good to press the restart button and go ahead and start on over with a green pumpkin TRD. And then not too far removed from the TRD, you want to go ahead and throw something in a little bit more of a craw pattern or a bug pattern, I recommend this bad boy right here, the TRD Tickler, which in essence, it's pretty much the same TRD. However, towards the end, towards the last third, it's cut into these appendages, which impart great action in the water. And this, not too far removed from the bank, I think they mistake it for a terrestrial or a crawdad, and they absolutely love it. Can't get enough of it. On your ultralight weights to like a 1/15th if possible. All right, so moving on from worms, let's go to our swim baits. As you can see, I like the Z-Man as well for my swim baits. The Elastec, you really can't go wrong with lures that catch you fish over and over and over and over again, and still at the end of the season end up looking like this. I like to go for my traditional golden shiner patterns. I like to go for my traditional bluegill looking patterns. I really fell in love with gold patterns last year, and I'll show you what I mean. This one in particular here is the Z-Man Diesel Minnow in 5-inch, the Golden Boy pattern, and oh boy is it golden. This was probably the #1 swim bait for me. Oh, I also threw it in a combination with a weighted swing jig they call the Texas Eye Jig Head. This is the 1/4 ounce version. Again, I fish a lot of shallow waters, and by shallow, I mean the deepest part of our pond. Well, I live on a chain of 3 ponds, a pond really, a lake, and a backwater. The backwater is filled with sneaky biggins as well, but primarily the pond section that I fish, it tops out at about 8 foot deep. So even a 1/4 ounce can start to get a little bit heavy. I like to fish the lighter weights. If I can, I'll fish a lure naked as well. Maybe subsurface or right at the top, especially over grass, especially by the pad edges. Another lure that I wanted to highlight, which again I got in mystery tackle and then just ended up going down on. Guess is because it's new and the fish haven't really seen this before, and I thought this was interesting. So here we have the Yodo worm by 10,000 Fish, a Catchco product. Not only is it ribbed, not only is it going to give you that shiner profile, not the color I'm talking about, the actual girth and profile of the bait itself. So you could fish this many ways, but the #1 suggested way, and the way I like, because obvious reasons that you can see right there, is that tickle tail. That tickle tail is pretty new. Haven't seen it on any other lure yet myself. and the fish haven't seen it, and oh boy, did they let you know they haven't seen it before. It either irritated them or caught the interest pretty hard whenever they see this. I like to put it on as a chatterbait trailer or a spinnerbait trailer. And then towards the end of the year, I started noticing, hey, this thing works by itself pretty damn well. You know, at first, the shape of it, teardrop shape with the elongated tail, you know, it's a little bit off, it's a little bit different, I'll admit. However, this was a great lure. This was hard to beat. This was hard to beat. Here we have a leftover Rage Swimmer. This lure I didn't actually start using until the end of the year, when in the middle of a tournament I realized I was almost out of the Biospawn Exo Swim. And I went ahead and went to Walmart and picked one of these up. And before I knew it, I ended up picking like 4 or 5 more packages up. And I was literally left with one single swim bait at the end of the year. The one thing I didn't like about this was you had to go through about 3 or 4 pike per one bass. Something about this one lure here, maybe the color pattern, the pickerel and pike absolutely would smash this. So would the bass, but again, you'd have to go through a couple of them before you get to one mama bass. Moving on here, we have the Zoom Super Fluke. What else can you say about this bad boy other than it's big, it's white, and it's a killer in the fall? It's a killer, you know, whenever you can get them to bite this lure anyway, but especially in the fall, you know, when it's hard to locate fish, this is a good option. You know, you slow down, you break water down really well, and you swing for the fences with this, especially around brush and cover along the edge of pads. This did well for me, did very well. The last swim bait I wanted to show you. So this bad boy, the reason why I'm even speaking about it is because as you can see, it's still in the box. This, when I got it, it scared me. I opened it up and I was like, whoa, I'll never catch a bass with this. Not around here anyway. This is out of my comfort zone. So much so to the point that at the end of this year, the first thing I went and did when I was thinking of what are my goals for next year and where should I start in terms of lure accumulation, I said I'm going big or I'm going home. So the emphasis for this year is solely based off of last year, and also, you know, something that I noticed in tournament situations. You know, I did get a couple of fish in the teens, and I did get a couple of fish around the 20s, the lower 20s, very, very low 20s, to the point where I didn't crack 20/50, 20 and a half. But I want to get more big fish in the boat consistently. I want to become more of a big fish hunter. And this year, we're going to take a crack at it with your big old swim baits like this. Primarily soft plastic swim baits, but as well, you know, we're going to open up the floodgates here. And I went ahead and ordered glides. I ordered big top water. I ordered big baits overall, bigger profile. It's time to get rid of that fear and move on and start learning how to do some big fish hunting. I wanted to show you this as well because, you know, when I got that inkling last year, I noticed that I should be tossing more jigs. You know, the jig bite worked well for me, but what I ended up tossing was a lot of finesse jigs. Not a lot of finesse jigs. I picked up one particular finesse jig. I want to say they're the Strike King finesse jigs. And before I knew it, you know, I was getting numbers on them a lot. They say that jigs are a big fish catcher, and I'm going to pick up right where I left off. You see here a lot of 3/8, a lot of 1/4 ounce. The biggest one here is a 1/2 ounce. You know, I will work my way up. I did order a couple of jigs as well, a bunch of trailers. It was my introduction really to jigs last year, and you know, it's something I'm going to continue forward with this year. Trailer here. So here we have a Zoom Super Speed Crawl in the watermelon red. Just an example of the kind of trailer I'd throw on a jig. Or really, you could even fish this around pad edges by itself. A bobber stop, basically pegged weight, just yo-yoing it up and down, maybe even drag it through the pads. But yeah, just an example of the kind of trailers I was throwing. Another one here, Adrenaline Bug. This one was pretty good. I only have one or two left. This was a mystery tackle box item. But let me show you something. This, paired with this, does a lot of damage. You could even go ahead and reverse it, have a black and blue jig head with the black and blue skirt, and have a green pumpkin trailer. But the combination of black and blue and green pumpkin on a craw just does wonders. So much so to the point where I started looking up the different color patterns, which I found interesting, that changed throughout the course of the year on crawdads. Yes, this is in my opinion anyway, the best color pattern, especially in dirty water for crawdad. If you're trying to get a jig bite. But I found interesting the gambit of colors that they run throughout the year, and in moving into this year, I am going to look to seasonally match the hatch, which should be a good deal. Just another example here of a finesse trailer for a finesse jig application. This is the Biospawn Exopod. You know, I like a lot of the Biospawn stuff. I don't know if I've said that once or twice already, but you'll start to notice the companies that grab my attention here and there. And, you know, I'm not afraid to shout them out. I just want you to know I'm not sponsored by anyone, not yet anyway. But I like this because it was just the overall size and profile of it. You know, it was good for finesse applications in terms of finesse jigging. I was also doing quite a bit of finesse punching, which seems like an oddity in itself. However, on those hot summer days where you really got to reach in there shallow, and get it through some pretty nasty cover, this was a great option. So I went ahead and same thing, got a couple more in different color patterns for this year, and we'll be taking a look at that in the upcoming episodes. Here we have the Kitech Noisy Flappers. I experimented with these quite a bit last year. Obviously, you can run them across open water, separate that right there, the legs, and run them across Texas rig. You can play with the weights on them as well and just swim them. I noticed I'd get couple bites more than not in the middle of the water column around the edges of pad island formations. Also running it straight through the pads, almost like if you're running it through the pads, I'd get a lot of attention. Could have been because of the chartreuse belly just running across that water, but this was a decent lure for me and lasted a bunch too. Nothing special about that Kitech plastic, but I don't know. Could have just been the way the hook sits on it. You know, it didn't really get molested in the playing of the fish, but you know, it lasted for me. One thing to mention though, I guess I didn't really fish them until the fall. Even that one, we're talking a good month and change of fishing. Moving on, same deal. Finesse jigging, try to get a natural hue, but here we have the Fat Albert grub, another product of Zoom. It's just a curly tail grub. I do like the ribs on it. You know, they're all ribbed. I just particularly like the way this one feels as it cuts through the water, especially when just being fished on a Texas rig as well. It just, the bite detection on this particular style of grub for me just did it. Anything with that dark green or that brownish tone, especially with peppered in with the black flake or a dark tone flake, was really the deal for me this year, especially around wood. For some reason, I don't know why, the grub is just a killer around wooden structure. Another finesse deal, which I consider to be a variation just not too far off from the grub deal, is, for me anyway, is the tube deal. I love these. Wouldn't really stray too far off from Zoom. Z-Man makes a great tube as well. That's really finessey. But same thing, super salts. What else can you say? Just the action that imparts when you toss this by a drop off or the edge of pads, just spiraling down, imitates a dying bait fish. Then when you fish it along the bottom, it just imitates a crawdad, especially filled with eggs. Just love it. All right, moving on to the tackle box portion of, wow, got some rust on those hooks. I gotta go sort through my tackle. All right, here is one of the Biospawn Exo Swims I was talking about. This is a 4-inch version, and again, just, you know, fish one of these a lot. Straight up Texas rig, no weight involved, or as a trailer for a spinner or a chatter. And speaking of spinners, here are some of my spinners left over for the year. Some are a little beat up. Here's one. I use it a lot. I used a lot of last year. My introduction to spinners was with this bad boy right here, just in different weight sizes and different colorations, as you can see here. Again, with one of the Yoda worms, the Booyah Pond Magics. That's pretty much what I played around with. There are a couple different ones here. Like, I know this is something new to the market, a Yozuri Knuckleball. I try to match the hatch with most of my deals, but I found that different patterns work as well. You know, the bleeding shad imitator here. Bright colors for different watercolor situations. I have a bluegill golden shiner imitator for the Yozuris here. I'll go through his box, clean it out. Moving on to the next tray, we have a little assortment of different things here. So we're gonna have, you know, a couple blade baits here, golden shiner imitators, a couple of Rapalas. This is the jointed shad wrap with a little gold hue in the middle. Couldn't really find at the time the pattern I was looking for, but I ended up going with this one anyway. As well, I believe in the baby bass. This is a shallow diving crank. There's a little bit more of a deep diving crank in the baby bass. You know, and Rapalas are Rapalas. They cost exactly how they perform. Here you have some of the lipless cranks by Rapala. You can see that I'm gaining a little confidence with certain companies. It's good to have that confidence with certain companies. So moving on, you know, just a couple lipless cranks in here. A couple of these are Bill Lewis rattle traps. I really shouldn't clean some of this stuff out. This one was a mystery tackle box one that I got. You know, and I think this one was pretty good. Bluegill pattern, Bill Lewis rattle trap. This is not my strength in terms of fishing. Not for a lack of trying. I guess really, yeah, I could apply a little bit more time this style of fishing as opposed to finesse fishing with soft plastics. But I love soft plastics. Here we have some inline spinners, some Daredevils, golden shiner imitating jerk baits, shallow diving. Oh, these were pretty good for me. All of the Rebel lures, the crick hopper, I forget what this one's called, is some kind of bug. Hook's extremely small, but very finessey. This one's called the horsefly. No, yes, I don't know. You go through a bunch of crappie, but still, you know, if you needed numbers for bass, this will at least get you going. Not bad. I think something's unique about that sound, really, in the rattle. Box number 3, the topwater and jig box. Also the chatterbait box as well. Show you a couple of my favorites from this year. Obviously, we have different array of topwaters, jigs. This one's a little swim jig here. This one was a Roy Williams special. Very finessey. I used it in combination with small paddle tails, and actually with that exopod, it was great on this bad boy right here. Here's an example of one of the Strike King finesse jigs. These I used a ton of last year again. This is Lunker Hunt Spider. But moving on, the chatterbait, I would say, was my third strong suit last year, which came out of nowhere. I hadn't fished chatterbait at all till last year, and I ain't gonna lie, the elites are nice and all that, you know, whatever. Can't seem to find it right now. Anyway, the point, the original chatterbait, and I had a couple different versions of them. I forget what this one's called. This is like a swing rugby head. This is like a hybrid between an actual jig and a chatterbait. Like a swing jig chatterbait deal, if you would. I like the original Z-Man chatterbait more than the rest, to be honest with you. I don't know what it is, but you know, it just got me the most bites out of all the chatterbaits. Could be the pattern. Well, not really. I had it in a couple different patterns. Have them out. One second. All right, so I've got these sprayed down. Got to clean some of the hooks and take off some of the trailers and whatnot. But here we go. Here's another example. I think this is the Elite in a sungill pattern. Here's the regular deal. And the regular deal, yes, I'm sure they all have their different vibrations and whatnot. Maybe the ones that you pay more for have more of a specialized and more of a honing in vibration effect for the bass. But the original, again, just did it for me. Trimmed the skirt up a little tiny bit. This one wasn't bad either. This one was okay. And since I got this out, let me just show you some of the frogs I threw.